of sorrows, Lamb of God, by his own betrayed, the sin of man and wrath of God has been on Jesus laid. Silent as he stood accused, beaten, mocked, and scorned, bowing to the Father's will, he took the crown of thorns. Oh, that rugged cross, my salvation, where your love poured out over me. Now my soul cries out, hallelujah, praise and honor unto thee. Saints of heaven, God's own Son, to purchase and redeem and reconcile the very ones who nailed him to a tree. Oh, that rugged cross, my salvation, where your love poured out over me. Now my soul cries out, hallelujah, praise and honor unto thee. Now my debt is paid, it is paid in full by the precious blood that my Jesus spilled. Now the curse of sin has no hold on me. Whom the Son sets free, oh, it's free indeed. Now my debt is paid, it is paid in full by the precious blood that my Jesus spilled. Now the curse of sin has no hold on me. Whom the Son sets free, oh, it's free indeed. Oh, that rugged cross, my salvation, where your love poured out over me. Now my soul cries out, hallelujah, praise and honor unto thee. See, the stone is rolled away, behold the empty tomb. Hallelujah, God be praised, he's risen from the grave. Oh, that rugged cross, my salvation, child of weakness, watch and pray, find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone can change the leper's spots and melt a heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save, my lips shall still repeat. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. He washed it white as snow. He washed it white as snow. Lord, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Know his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yeah, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against. a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. Count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will all my days. Yes, I will, and I choose to pray, to glorify the name of all names. When nothing can stand against, and I choose to pray, to glorify the name of all names. And nothing can stand against. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
Well, welcome to everybody. Welcome to you that are visiting and joining us online. I recognize that at this stage in life, not everybody is able to come out and join us in person. So we are happy that we are able to do this form of gathering. I do encourage you, if you are able, and as things have opened up, I just want to take the time to encourage you to come to the regular Sunday morning meetings. If you can't make it to Calvary, you've been joining us online, but from a different spot, I encourage you to connect with other Christians and just make the most of these gatherings. I also want to explain why I'm here right now. So our pastors are getting a break. My name is Trevor Moore, and they just asked if I would help out this morning and bring you a message. So without further ado, let's turn to the Lord in prayer, and then we will jump into the scriptures together. Heavenly Father, I can't see the people that I'm preaching to. And that's very strange to me at this moment. But God, I rest in the fact that you know them, that you would know those who would watch this on the Sunday morning when it's first launched, and those that might go back and watch it later on. God, I believe that not only do you know them, but that you care about these people. So it is certainly my hope that this message coming from your word would be a blessing to them, that they would be encouraged by it, and that they would see you as the absolute great almighty God. God, I don't know what's going on in their lives this morning. I don't know how this message could be an impact to them. But God, I pray that you would open their hearts, that they would know you as you really are, that they would put their trust in you. And God, that if they are left from this message with more questions than answers, that you would not leave them, but that you would lead them to the truth. God, I do want to take a moment and thank you for those people who are in ministry, both here at Calvary and throughout the world. It's good when they can take a little bit of a break. I pray for those with families as they spend time with their family right now. May it be a time of refreshing for them. For these fathers in our community here, God, I pray that you would raise up in them godly fatherhood, that they could pour that out into their children. And as husbands, that they would pour that into their wives. But God, you need to fill them first. So right now in this time of rest, I pray that you would fill them. And God, now I recognize that I'm limited, and I pray that you would use me to be clear as I speak and open our hearts to your word this morning. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So this morning we're going to be looking from the passage in Luke chapter 8. And I know you can probably pause this or something, but Luke chapter 18, I think I just said 8, but Luke chapter 18, we're going to be looking at a little parable in here. Luke chapter 18, verse 1 says, "And he told them a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and to not lose heart." Now, you probably already know what a parable is. It's an earthly story that has a heavenly message. You might be more familiar with some of the other parables, the parable of the Good Samaritan or the parable of the prodigal son. These are parables that compare some of the characters in these stories with us and with God, and they reveal our hearts, and they reveal God's hearts. Now, the parable in Luke 18 is still going to show us God's heart, but it's not going to do this by comparison. It will do it this time through contrast. So it's kind of like learning what it is to be satisfied by taking some moments and just feeling what it is to be hungry, or learning what it is to be warm by taking a moment to see what it is like to be cold. Sometimes it's hard to know these things, to experience them without looking at the contrast. So here we're going to be looking at a parable, and we will be learning about God's heart, but it will be through contrast. Now, in Mark 4, verse 34, it says that Jesus spoke publicly using parables. He did this often, but privately, he would go to his own disciples, and he would explain everything to them. And even early in Mark, Jesus says that when he explained the parables to his disciples, that he was giving them the secret of the kingdom of God. Now, I mention this because the meanings of the parable here, even this one in Luke 18, is important if you are a disciple of Jesus. Now, thankfully, I know I'm not going to mess it up, because thankfully, the meaning is clearly stated in verse 1. The meaning of this parable is that disciples ought always to pray and not lose heart. Yay, done. That's the big meaning of this message. And maybe that's all that you really needed this morning, was just to hear that one more time, a reminder of this truth. But maybe there's some that are gathering online here that need a little bit more. So we're going to unpack that the big picture of this. And we want to learn how to apply this to our lives as disciples. Now, before we get into the characters of this parable, let's consider some of the background. Now, this might be kind of obvious, Captain Obvious statement here, that followers of Jesus follow Jesus. So he leads us. He's teaching the disciples in this case. He's leading them to pray, and he's been doing that. So he's been teaching them, like in Luke 11, he teaches them the Lord's Prayer, a prayer of worship, of humility, a prayer of physical and spiritual dependence, of repentance and forgiveness. Just a little bit after that, in Luke 11, verse 5 through 13, he teaches them to ask, to seek, to knock, to ask for the Holy Spirit. And throughout all this time, Jesus has been modeling what it is to pray. And he often goes off on his own even to pray. So right now, it's not the first time that he's introducing prayer. He's going to be adding to it. And what has he added in this case? In verse 1, he's added that they are to not lose heart. So the first thing to acknowledge here is that even Jesus is saying that disciples can lose heart. Maybe you this morning are feeling this way. Maybe you're saying in your prayer life, what's the point? Is anybody listening? Is there going to be an answer? Maybe like King David, as he wrote in Psalm 13, you would say, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me?" If you feel this way, please, as we look into this, don't see this as a scolding. If you feel like you've lost heart, don't see this as a scolding, but as an encouragement. And I also believe that his teaching is reasonable too. So with that aim, let's look at some of the characters. We're introduced to the first character, and I've titled him the horrible, no good, unrighteous judge. In Luke 18, verse 2, it says, he said, "In a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man." Now, I said that this is a parable of contrast, and yes, it is about God, and we are going to be learning about the heart of God, but just be careful that as we learn about this judge, the judge does not represent God. This is a horrible judge when we compare him against God. In fact, this is a horrible judge if I just compare him against any sort of judge or what our expectation of a good judge would be. Still, it is a reasonable depiction. There are flawed judges. To the original audience that Jesus would be talking to, they were in Roman-occupied land. And there may be some good judges out there, but there also could have been judges that had just bought their way into that position of authority. At this moment, we're only told three things. He doesn't fear God, he doesn't respect man, and somehow he's a judge. So the first thing, he doesn't fear God. Now, you're probably aware of Proverbs 4, verse 10, that says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." Now, this sounds like an important thing to know and to respect and to follow if you are going to be a judge. But even more specific than that, a less known verse in Deuteronomy 27, verse 19, says, "Cursed be anyone who perverts the justice due to the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow." Now, I think this would be a good reason for a judge to fear God. But this guy, God, curses, no biggie. He doesn't seem to care about this at all. We know one thing about him. He has no fear for God. The second thing we know about him is that he doesn't respect man. Remember, this is a parable of contrast. He's being contrasted to, first of all, the golden rule. In Luke 6:31, it says that as you wish others would do to you, so do to them. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of what respecting man would be. But maybe we could say that he's even being contrasted to something a little broader than that. By not fearing God and not being respectable to men, He's kind of being contrasted to the great commandment in Luke 10:27 that says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind. So he's failed on that, or he's being contrasted to that. And love your neighbor as yourself. So again, he's being contrasted to that. So this first character, the horrible, no good, unrighteous judge. Now, if you were seeking an audience with him, I think it would be very easy for you to lose heart. And that's kind of the point. We do have judges like this, and we do put hope in them. Why else would he even go into the courtroom? Anybody going into a courtroom has the hope that the judge will make the right judgment. So remember, this is a parable of contrast. We've looked at this first character, but it's pointing to something that is bigger than these earthly experiences. So before revealing that truth, we need to look at the second character, the persistent widow. Let's read again in Luke 18, verse 3. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. We don't get much about her either in this. So far, what we know about her is that she is a widow. She's quite likely part of the lowest part of society. Quite likely, she has tried everything in her power against this adversary. She has gone to everyone that she can for support. But at this stage in the story, she is like David saying, how long shall my enemy be exalted over me? And I believe that Jesus wants us to connect with this widow. So if before she became a widow, if her husband didn't provide for her, she would likely be in extreme poverty, unable to work on her own. She would most likely be easily ignored by society, and especially by this judge who would just see her as insignificant. She's not going to be able to vote for him to be the judge still. And perhaps you feel that way this morning. Perhaps you feel insignificant. So I asked myself, why would he have chosen a widow? Well, I don't know. That's the straightforward answer. I have no idea. But because he did choose a widow, I know some other things about God's heart towards widows. It's already been revealed. It was revealed in the law. Here's an example, just a tidbit from the law in Exodus 22, verse 22. You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do mistreat them, and they cry out to me, that is God, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will burn, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children fatherless. Wow, that's language that we don't hear much today. It sounds incredibly harsh, but it's language of a defender. It is language of someone, in this case God, who is saying, watch out. If you do this, I am the judge, and I will do this. So we already see a little bit of God's heart from the law. We also see a little bit of God's heart in Jesus' interaction with widows. A couple come to mind fairly quickly. The widow's offering. She comes forward in the temple. She puts in her mite, a small amount of money. And Jesus says, look at her. What she's offered is greater than all the riches of these other people. He singles out this lady and honors her in this way. Consider also the widow's son that was raised from the dead. Why do we know it was a widow's son? That was significant in that she had already lost her husband and now her son. By Jesus giving back her son to her, he was protecting and providing for the widow too. So we see God's heart through Jesus' interactions towards widows. We also see God's heart towards widows in the first directions to the early church. The office of a deacon was established to take care of widows. And that goes on, even a large section, as Paul is teaching Timothy, is devoted just to how we honor widows. So the point is, God cares for widows. This down and out insignificant person that maybe you identify with, God cares for. And I want that to sink in too. If you related and connected with this woman, God cares for you. Now, we know that she's a widow. Besides that, we know that she is persistent. That's where the whole parable gets its name, the parable of the persistent widow. Though I argue it's more about God. What do we know about her persistence? First of all, we know that persistence costs. It doesn't mention that in here, but I think that it's significant that we consider what her persistence would cost her. Certainly, persistence costs time. Easily waiting to to be seen by the judge, maybe traveling to go to the judge. A time that she could have used to try and fix things on her own means, time to complain to other people, time to search around for other advice. But no, she goes to the judge. She goes to the one in authority. Her persistence would cost her time. It is possible, this doesn't say it, I'm just trying to make us understand and kind of see this in a way that could apply to ourselves, that her persistence also cost her reputation. By going back and back to this judge, it says that she kept coming to him. She opened herself up to ridicule. Everyone around her might have easily said to her, "What is the point? Why are you returning to this guy and not getting any results?" And remember, this is opening our eyes to a heavenly message behind it here. Yeah, another thing that it opens her up to is harm to her emotional health. I didn't know another way to word that, but every time that she cried out, "Give me justice over my adversary," that opened her up to be disappointed. It opened her up for confusion, for rejection. Persistence costs, and it's easy to lose heart. So, up to this stage, Jesus has set up two characters, the ungodly judge and the persistent widow. And he's teaching us to pray and to not lose heart. That's the big picture. And so far, it's very easy to see how the widow could lose heart. But there is an implied question. Is persistence worth the cost? Is this persistence reasonable? It's implied. It's not answered yet, but let's see. Let's carry on here. So Luke 18, verse 4 through 6 now. For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, "Though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice, so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming." And the Lord said, "Hear what the unrighteous judge says." Okay, so at this spot, Jesus is really leaning on the answer of that implied question. But like a good teacher, he's looking to the students to come up and make their own conclusions on it. Is this reasonable, even with an unrighteous judge? This is a question that I have to put before you too, because that's going to really kind of influence the way that you see the answer on it. But let's look at another example just before we get to the answer on this. Earlier, in Luke 11, verse 5 through 8, Jesus is teaching his disciples how to pray. Very similar situation, and he puts out a very similar question. He says, what response would his disciples expect if they asked a friend for some bread to give to another friend, but it came at a really inconvenient time? So we're talking, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The friend shows up. Maybe he was supposed to show up for supper. Supper plans didn't happen. Now he's showing up in the middle of the night. There's no food left in the house. And the disciple is supposed to go to another friend, knock on the door, and say, "Please give me some bread so I can feed my visitor." Now, what would the response be is the question. Would the response be, number one, "Do not bother me. The door is now shut. My children are with me in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything." Okay, that's an option. Or, because he's your friend and because of your boldness, he will get you what you need. So, like this story about the friend with the bread, this parable of the persistent widow asks, if these earthly, flawed people will do the right thing, How much more reasonable is it to have faith that God will do the right thing? Now, I personally have never ordered an Uber, okay? So there may be some flaws in this example that I'm giving to you, and I've never ordered an Uber. But I imagine that what would happen is I'd type in my phone that I want to get from point A to point B, and then someone shows up at my door. I don't think I would have a choice of like what vehicle comes, but it's the vehicle that's kind of the point on this. Example A, a Dodge Aries from 1987 pulls up to my door. Beautiful K car. And the guy in it, he comes to me and he says, I can get you from point A to point B. I'm like, that's a really old car. I don't know if I should trust that. And he says, well, I'm not a mechanic or anything, but I've driven it before. I think you can trust me. Okay, so is it reasonable for me to trust that guy? Now, option 2, a 2021 electric car pulls up to my door, and it outsteps the driver, but the driver is this famous owner of this electric car company. And he's been all the way around the world doing publicity to show how reliable his car is, how dependable it is, how safe it is, and how amazing the range would be on it. Okay, so should I trust him? There's 2 examples there. I think it's reasonable to trust the first one, but how much more reasonable is it to trust the second one? And here, that's where I feel we come into the big reveal of this parable. In Luke 18, verse 7 through 8. Verse 7 says, "And will not God give justice to his elect, who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily." So he brings out a couple rhetorical questions. But then Jesus moves to the big takeaway, that he will give justice. The first rhetorical question, will not God give justice to his elect? It's saying, yes, he will. It is reasonable to believe that he will give justice. For those who cry out to him day and night, yes, he will bring them justice. Will he delay? No, he will not. These are rhetorical questions that move to the main takeaway, that he will give justice to them and speedily. Do not lose heart. Remember, that's the big thing here. Do not lose heart. It is reasonable to cry out to God. Do not lose heart. God will do what is right. Now, I do want to clarify. This is not saying that if you pray, do not lose heart, because persistence wears God down and you can get him to do what you want. No, that's not it. We're not saying that God is like the unrighteous judge. It's a parable of contrast. We're not saying that he is bothered by widows. We've in fact said that he is the defender of widows. And I would go on to say, if you didn't connect with the widows, he is the defender of the social outcasts, of the unemployed, the addicted, the terminally ill, the foreigner, the fatherless. We're not saying that, like the unrighteous judge, we're not saying that he can be beaten down. No, God is the eternal king, eternally enthroned. So, since it is reasonable for the widow to put her faith in this unrighteous judge, it is exceedingly more reasonable for disciples to put their faith in the righteous judge and to not lose heart. If it is reasonable for this widow to keep coming, it is exceedingly more reasonable for us to cry out day and night, even exhausted, but believing that the cost of this time is worth it, and to not lose heart. It is reasonable for the widow to face this mockery, and it is exceedingly more reasonable for us to persist, even if people mock us. It is reasonable for the woman to open herself up to disappointment, but it is exceedingly more reasonable for us to believe that he will not delay in his judgment, to believe that his time, his ways, and his will are right and righteous, even when we have to see by faith. The conclusion is that it is exceedingly reasonable, so pray continually and do not lose heart. But that's not the end of the passage here. Before Jesus moves on to the next parable, Jesus gives a final application. It's a self-reflection, a reminder of the significance of his teaching for his disciples. The last sentence in this parable says, so this is reading from the last part of verse 8. It says, "Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" I'll read it again. "Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" Nevertheless means kind of like still or yet. It's kind of like saying, even after I've gone through all this teaching, even after laying out all the facts here that God will bring justice and that it is reasonable to continue in prayer, will Jesus find faith as evidenced in disciples of prayer? Will he find faith in evidence of disciples who are betting the farm that his authority reigns supreme, that he is truly the judge? I said that it leads us to self-reflection. At the beginning of the passage, Jesus implies that disciples can lose heart. So self-reflection here. Have you lost heart? Would Jesus conclude from your prayer life that you have faith? Perhaps you've concluded that Jesus is no different, or maybe that he's worse than this unrighteous judge. Or perhaps you've concluded that you are less significant to God than this widow is to the judge. I would ask you to examine Scripture, to ask God. Don't just take my word for it on this. But go out and study people from history who have prayed and ask them, why did they bet the farm, so to speak? Why did they say, I will devote myself to praying continually and looking for God to answer my prayers? Why did they do that? God has probably put other people into your life too that you can lean on. I would ask if you're joined with me that you'd talk with the people that you came with. But I do believe that you're not alone, that people are in your life that God has put there. Now, perhaps at this moment of self-reflection, your prayer life doesn't reflect this faith that Jesus is talking about here, but maybe you're waiting for something really, really important. And I just want to challenge that the thought of waiting on only those big significant things is actually kind of treating God like he's a genie that is going to offer you 3 big wishes or something like that. He tells us to come and pray always. Bring all things to him. This last sentence here, it's to give us self-reflection and, again, to remind us of the significance of the teaching. There's something implied in this that Jesus will be looking for a faith evidenced in prayer. And I don't mean to pry or insinuate anything about your prayer life, but it appears right here. It's the last portion of this. This is the last thing that Jesus wanted us to understand. So if that, in your case, means that you need to start in prayer, then start today. Perhaps you're just not even sure what to pray for. Well, as disciples who are following Jesus, we're part of a body. We're part of this holy community. And God is going to use us differently. So I encourage you to ask God, what should you pray for? Cry out to him day and night are some of the words that we're getting from this passage. And I know there's some of you that wake up in the middle of the night and you're not sure why and you wish you hadn't. Ask God who you should be praying for in that moment. That might be why you're awake. But Scripture does give us several general commands. There's a few that I could look at here. But before I get to those, I'm just moving my order around a little bit. I just want to give a little example from my own life. So in my own life, my mother-in-law has been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We have prayed for miraculous healing. And today, the tumor is no worse, but it's also still there. So what do I do? Is it reasonable for me to continue to keep praying? Is it reasonable for me to go into the courtroom of the judge and say, "This is my mother-in-law, please heal her"? Now, I see Jesus being revealed as the one who brings sight to the blind. He can make the lame to walk. He heals the deaf. He raises the dead. Could he actually bring her healing today? Now, I do put down this question of will he? I don't know if he will. He's the judge, and I think that's the part of this that's important on this, is I go into that room saying, "You are the judge, and I trust that your judgment is good," but I'm still going to ask. Consider even Jesus. When he went into Gethsemane, as recorded in Matthew 26, 36 through 44, Jesus prays to his Father. He says, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And then he goes and he does it again. And he does it again. 3 times he prays this. He believes that his Father has the authority. Jesus also submits, though, to the judgment, even a judgment that says no. But he comes in and he asks, and I believe that in faith we are to ask our great God to do great things, and that this honors him greatly. Now, I said that there were some other general commands, and I just want to kind of think that through as we look at some of these other general commands. First of all is authorities, and this is not a whole list of all the commands that are in the Bible. Search that out on your own. But authorities. In 1 Timothy 2, verse 1 through 2, it says, "First of all," so this is even to have preeminence, it should be the first kind of thing that you think about when you're praying, "I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings, and for all who are in high positions." And this past year, with the effects of COVID, with the effects of the lockdowns, I think it's brought to my heart and my family's heart just a renewed truth of our role that we are to pray for the people of this country. It's no surprise that the people in this country, the country in general, if I can speak of it as having a general belief, is post-Christian. It is not a country that is coming to God and seeking for justice from him. But if I can pray for my mother-in-law that she would have healing, can I not also pray that this world, the people in this country who do not yet know Jesus, that they will come to know him? What's harder for God to do? I think he's capable of doing both of these things. I think that's the point, is that we can put our faith in him because it is exceedingly reasonable. How about another spot? So another thing, a general commandment for us to pray for from Scripture. Workers in the harvest. In Luke 10, verse 2, it says that Jesus said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Does this mean pastors, missionaries? Yes, absolutely. Does it mean you? We are to pray for workers to join into the harvest. And is it reasonable? You could be thinking about your friends or your neighbors or yourself and say, I've got my life kind of all straightened out. I know that after so and so many years, I'm going to retire, and after I retire, I'm going to sell my house, and after I sell my house, I'm going to do this or that. You might have everything all planned up. Is it reasonable to believe that God could take you and lead you into that harvest field? This last one, I almost did the whole message on this passage, so I encourage you to look into it in further detail. But Luke chapter 6, verse 27 says, "But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you." I think if changing the hearts of the average person in Canada, if you think that's outside of God's realm, then it's going to be hard to pray for your enemies. And I don't mean to pray for your enemies so that there's some sort of empathy that you feel towards them. I don't believe that Jesus in that passage was teaching people to pray for their enemies so that his disciples would just be more loving and compassionate. But I do believe that there's actually an intention in there that we are to pray for them because there's hope for them because they're not dead yet and they can still turn to Jesus. We are to pray for the authorities around us. We are to pray even for our enemies. We're called to pray for so many different things. We have a lot of work to do. And I believe that this passage is asking us to ask our great God to do great things. It's not so much a passage about us persisting. It's telling us to not lose heart. It's worth persisting because we have a great God. It's worth persisting because he is not the unrighteous judge, and even the unrighteous judge listened and did what was right. Perhaps you needed to be reminded of that today. Perhaps there's somebody in your life even, a loved one, a friend, or a relative that you need to be praying for. But perhaps if you started off like King David in Psalm 13, if you started off crying out, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" Perhaps you too can conclude with King David. By the end of his psalm, his heart has changed, and he says, "But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me." Let's turn to the Lord in prayer. Lord Jesus, you taught your disciples to pray always and to not lose heart. And you gave them this example of this horrible judge and this insignificant widow. But then you reassured your disciples, and I believe this is meant to be an encouragement to us today, that you are the great and good, almighty, powerful judge, and that we can turn to you with greater hope than we would in an unrighteous judge. That we can and should continue to bring our prayers to you with hope, without losing heart. So God, I pray for those who have joined online today. Stir up in our hearts that we would become people of prayer. That when you, Jesus, return, that you would find faith among your disciples. I pray this in your holy name. Amen.